Hoppe. This is Hoppe Hour.
What's up? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe. And from the men's room on 99.9 KISW in Seattle, Miles Montgomery is on the show. What's up, dude?
Ryan, great to be here, man. Appreciate it, man.
Hell yeah, dude. So how has everything been going with the show?
Dude, things are going great with the show, man. The show is, I think like anything else, you kind of just try to do a good show every day, and you try to be entertaining, and you try to just make people laugh and give them some escapism, and give them a chance to kind of just relieve themselves a little bit. And I hope we do a good job of doing that with our listeners, and just making sure that there's a lot going on out there. So it doesn't matter where you are, but it's still debatable on what your favorite cereal is, and that might sound trivial and stuff like that, but we talk about things and we get on to certain topics that are kind of just more universal. And I think that's been one of the things that we started with, and we've always stuck to it. I recall a weird just interaction with David Lee Roth, where hanging out and talking with him, and we're obviously doing David Lee Roth things, which is probably not very good to talk about, but his thing was always just trying to invite everyone to the barbecue was his comment, and it was like, no matter who you are or where you live or whatever, you invite your neighbors over, and whatever walk of life they come from and whatever they do, you try to bring everyone into the equation and have a little community. And I think we've done a good job at that. I think, like anything else, we just try to be funny, man. And we set ourselves up for such situational improv, and we have a good time with each other, and we have fun, and we feel like if we can make each other laugh, then hopefully the audience is laughing too. Of course, like doing a show in front of a dead audience, you don't know, it's radio. So, but you hope people are laughing, right?
So I have two friends, well, they're brothers, that are from Washington, and the one brother lives here in Tampa, and he's the biggest fan of you guys. He was actually in prison for 5 years, and he would listen to BJ and Miggs in the morning and then you guys in the afternoon. So you guys seem like that type of show where you guys are very good at being relatable, where people feel like they know you guys, even though if they haven't met you, which is what I feel like rock radio or like edgy talk radio does, is it makes the listener feel like they know you guys.
I don't even know if the format matters, to be honest with you, Ryan. I think that the biggest thing that you can do is connect with the listener that you have. So if you can connect with, and the crazy thing is, you don't know who you're connecting with. You don't know like what you're talking about as far as when someone's going to gravitate to that topic or gravitate to that. So you never know. Like I've been on the elevator with, a 50-year-old woman from Taiwan, and she was like, "I love your show." And I'm like, "You don't seem like the kind of person that I thought would listen to the show." And I instead of, we're really not trying to be edgy as much as we're trying to just be relatable and have a connection with the listener. So and I know that sounds vanilla, and I know it sounds crazy, and it's like, well, you should talk about these hard topics, or you should do this. But ultimately, that's kind of not how we style our show. We style our show in a way where anybody can be a part of it. Whether you're 10 years old, whether you're 70 years old, we're going to have a conversation where you can feel like you're invited. And, the star of our show is not us. It's the listener, and our chance to talk with them and talk about their experiences and give a stage for people to just, say what's on their mind. And I think that's a very rare thing, other than, you have Twitter comments and Facebook comments, and everyone's trying to say what they want to say. But when you have a conversation with someone and they have the opportunity to join you in that, I think that offers a really different perspective into life and, other people's lives. And I think it's more important to listen sometimes and to listen to other people's lives and what they've been through to kind of understand where they're coming from. But yeah, it's not really agenda driven, as much as far as just trying to hopefully get everybody there to listen. I know that sounds cheesy, but I mean, no one wants to go someplace and argue with somebody or get in a fight with somebody. We're not trying to be preachy. We're actually trying to listen, to people and what they think.
And I think that's what works for you guys, is you guys know what you're very good at, because I've noticed with radio shows and even comics, and even if you watch like TV and movies, is everything's about like Trump now and everything going on in Washington, and everything has to be preachy. Like I was watching the Joker, and it just felt very preachy. And I feel like what works for you guys and what works for BJ and Miggs and everybody over there is that I don't feel like I'm being preached at. It just feels like I'm listening to friends.
Well, and it's all how you deliver information. Like, look, we could all let's assume that all 5 members of the show went and watched the debut of the Joker. Now, some shows will come in and say, well, I thought this, and I thought this, and this is what I thought, and you have all these opinions from the people on the show, which is great. People know what they're talking about. They have the right to express their opinion, but the best way to do radio is not to say and not to preach, but it's to say like, hey, we didn't see the Joker. Did anyone out there see the Joker? Was it a good movie? Should we go see it? And then the lights blow up. We have 20 lines deep of people who want to tell us about that movie. Now, if we were to go in there and tell people, well, I thought this and this and this and this and blah, 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 who cares? No one cares. But if somebody calls in and says like, hey, man, I went to see the movie. I was really entertained by it. Next person calls up and says, hey, man, I thought it was, a socially important movie based on where we are in society, blah, 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 whatever. No one cares, I don't think, as much as what we have to say, as much as what regular people have to say. And I think we give people the forum to not tell them, but to let them be available to give their comment. Even if it's a movie, if it's whatever we're talking about, like it's not about our opinion, it's about theirs. So we set it up so that even if, like I said, we all saw the movie, we all have very definitive opinions about it. We're not going to sit there and just preach about it because, you know what, our opinion's like anybody else. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, but if you agree with it or if you disagree with it, I think it's always better to hear from the listener because I think it's more entertaining. I think it's more engaging.
Now, there's this kind of vibe and kind of reputation, and I don't know if it's true or not because I haven't been to Washington, but there's this recent idea that, like, Seattle gets easily offended, and I guess you could say is like social warriors. Do they ever get offended by your show, or does that even exist in Washington? Like, because I often read online, people will be like, oh, the easily offended in Seattle. Like, is that a thing there, or is that kind of overblown, the whole idea of like fake outrage coming from Seattle?
I think that no, it's really just people. I mean, we're on across the country, so we get correspondence from Boston and from Miami and Kansas City and New Orleans and Sacramento and these markets that we're in where it's all different. So for us, we don't really have that one geographical thing, and that's kind of a interesting conundrum. We're a local show, obviously, and we broadcast out of Seattle, but our show is a national show. So it's great to hear perspective from across the country. So for us, it's really not geographical, if that makes sense. Like you don't, and I have not noticed that stereotype. You got to remember, man, like weed is legal here. People are really, really easygoing. We might have a couple comments that offend someone, maybe in Lexington, Kentucky, or Biloxi, Mississippi, but not often. But it's just more of a matter of where people are geographically. You're right, but we don't focus on that. Again, like we don't focus on like we're going to do males from 25 to like a program director sits you down in a meeting and says we're going to do this and this and this is all you have to focus on. It's not that. Everyone's invited to the barbecue, no matter where they are across the country, no matter what they do. So it's always different. The next phone call is from New Orleans. The phone call next to that is from Kansas City. So we don't experience that, I guess, as much live. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
I don't know where that reputation has come from. I don't know if it's just people trying to because I'm not trying to talk about the right side and the left side, but I just see a lot online. People will say oh, they're pussies out in Seattle and they're easily offended. But what's weird is it seems like an awesome city where it's the home of grunge rock and a lot of culture. I just don't know where this reputation has come where people will rip into Seattle for that. I just don't know what it's about. It's weird.
I don't either. I don't either. It's a great place. Like anywhere else, it has its problems, but it's not. from a political standpoint, it's like that never gets brought up. It's just, I think that if you were here, you would not notice that. Like, I never have, and I've been here for 15 years. So I'm not sure. Like, trust me, it was much harder to do radio in D.C. and Baltimore. Much harder. I mean, you want to talk about a place that wants to fire off and do that, it's kind of more of it's a different animal. It depends on where you are. And you can hear that from the callers. The callers from Boston sound, aggravated sometimes, and they sound, like they're pretty fired up. And then you listen to someone from New Orleans, and they're just enjoying life, man. They're hanging out, they're having a good time, they just want to be involved in the conversation. And it's different depending on colloquially where you are. You know what I mean?
Isn't it weird that, like, you can do different type of radio in different places? For example, here at 102.5 The Bone, one of our weekend shows 4 years ago, they measured their dicks, and then they, like, did a clay mold of it, and they had their wives come in, and their wives were blindfolded, and their wives had to guess which ones were their men's dick, and then which ones were, like, the other show members' dicks. And the thing is, there was a show in Chicago, Fred and Angie, and I was listening to them, and they were joking that they wanted to do that as a bit. So I sent Fred a text, and I was like, oh, yeah, we did that here at the Bone. And Fred's like, oh, yeah, we were just kidding. We could never do that. My point is, isn't it weird that, like, in some markets you can do the edgiest things, but in some markets like Chicago, you can't? You know what I mean?
You know what? I do, but I don't know because we don't, like, we're not in one market.
True.
So, but you're right. Yeah, totally. But like, we did a thing called Stand and Be Counted at one point in time, where when the erectile dysfunction drugs came out initially, we all did a blind test where one person took a Viagra, all under doctor's supervision, by the way. We brought them in, they did our blood pressure, they did all that stuff to make it clinical. So once we made it clinical, it's like anything else, like it's not shot. It's like, okay, well, one person is going to get a Cialis, which is basically a 36-hour enhancement drug. One person would get Viagra, and I think the other one was like Levitra. I can't remember, but either way, we got a spread of it. So one works instantly in 45 minutes, one works all weekend, but we did not know what we took. So the idea was to come back from that weekend and kind of discuss, like, hey, man, how was your weekend? But I actually, to be honest with you, I think that's a great idea. I mean, the station is the Bone. And to me, if I'm a listener, that would intrigue me. I would want to listen to it. So it's kind of weird to figure out where people stand, but you have to remember, man, like, we have a big country, and like going to Europe, man, you can cross a border in 30 miles and people speak a different language. Here, we're in this huge country where it's, sectioned off into all kinds of different, cultures and ideas, and it's a good representation of the United States. But for a fact, we all don't think the same. So I would hope that would fly in Chicago. I can't figure out why it wouldn't. If I'm the program director, I'm like, do it. That sounds great. Also, I don't like stealing ideas from other people, so I'd tell them to come up with something else. But, that sucks. I could do that. Sounds like a good bit.
Dude, it was funny because I was an overnight board op at that time, and it was the most Florida thing ever. I walk in, and there's just molds of dicks all over. There's like maybe 5 of them. And it was the
and
most...
You're wondering, which one of my coworkers is packing that?
It was just weird because, like, I remember I took a picture of it, and it was just like, oh, there's just a bunch of clay mold dicks just on the board. It's just weird. You have those moments where, like, maybe you're interviewing somebody in porn, or maybe you're just having food be dropped off, and you're like, I'm being paid to do this. Just those moments where it doesn't seem like real life.
And, dude, you're 6'6". You should be able to win that battle any day. You should volunteer to mold it,
Well,
I got this.
You know what the problem is, though? I've actually had girls. The issue is they think because, well, actually, I'm 6'8". Get it right, Miles. But people,
Sorry.
I'm just kidding.
I didn't mean to short you 2 inches there, Ryan.
It's all good, bro. I say I'm 6'9" on the apps just so I can type in 6'9" because I'm a douche on the apps. But what's funny, though, on the apps is, like, I'll admit it, I've maybe sent a few, like, dong pictures, dick pictures to girls on Snapchat, but what I do is I send it for 1 second so that they can, like, take a screenshot of it, And I've literally had girls go, "You're not big enough." And it's not that I'm small, but there's this expectation that because you're watching porn on Pornhub, they think that you're going to have this. And it's because I'm so tall that it's like kind of disappointing when they're like, "Oh yeah, you're too small." I'm like, no. It's not that it's just I'm not any of the guys that are just packing. I don't know. It's a weird world I live in with my generation. Very vapid.
No, I know, and I'm mentally your generation. You're not the same age, man. I just like to laugh and go to work and have a good time and try to come up with some concepts that more so than anything else, like that people enjoy listening to. And you never know what's going to be. So it's like I've done that kind of radio before. It's kind of weird. You're always fishing, man. You're always fishing for a different way to approach things. And I think one of the most important things about radio is no matter what you do, you have to make it your own. You have to make it your own. And I think that's the most important thing. We all get the same information. We all get the same news every day. We all get the same stories. We can all talk about the same things. It's just how are you going to present this information to make it funny to people? And no matter what it is, I think it's more about the art of the theater and how you pull this off. And so whether it's, that kind of thing about talking about, sending pics out or whatever, like how do you make that a segment? How do you make that something that you can get people to react to? How do you bring people into the equation so they can talk about it? And you'll find that, women will call, they'll say like, I dated this guy who was, 6'9" and had nothing, or I dated the guy who was 5'9", the biggest thing I've ever seen. Whatever it is, you've got to bring the idea behind the conversation is to make other people feel like they want to talk to you. And I think that's one of the simplest things, but one of the hardest things to do in radio.
One thing I noticed too is you have to reinvent yourself. You keep, like everybody rips into Howard for changing, but nobody would want him to be hitting on girls at this point. You know what I mean? Like I feel like if you're doing the same thing you were doing like in '93, that's why you're not as popular as you're doing something that's a quarter century old. You know what I mean? Sure. And that's a long time ago. And that's kind of back to, what we were talking about off air a little bit. You kind of have to evolve with the times. And we've done many things that we don't do now based on the fact that they're just simply not appropriate. They're not, they were at the time, I thought. They might have been on the edge, but, I don't think it rolls pretty well now. And the last thing that we want to do is offend people. The last thing that we want to do is make somebody punch out. Our goal is to entertain people, make them want to be a part of the conversation and listen. And I think it's all based on how you take that information and what you do with it. There could be a guy that blows a goat, or whatever. And, we all have that story. We all see that stuff. And Jimmy Fallon, we'll take him for an example. He might have that story too. And the way he filters it and what he does with it is what is key, and how he distributes that information that we all have. And maybe, I don't know, what's a good example? Maybe he does it in thank you notes, right? Yeah. Maybe he goes, thank you, guy, for blowing a goat to just show us that you are truly the greatest of all time. And he'll, do the thank you music and all that stuff. And that's his filter, and that's his benchmark, and that's how he gets that information out there. So the key element is that it goes through his filter. That information is universal, but he makes it his. And I think that's one of the most challenging things to do in radio. How do I make this ours, and how do I make it relatable to the people that I think are listening, which are probably, you don't know who's listening, but I think it's a lost art as far as, making content your own. We do a thing called the Shot of the Day every day. We toast somebody who has obviously done something stupid, but no one comes up to us and goes, hey man, I love that thing about you guys when you said about that dude who blew a goat. They come up and they say, your shot of the day the other day about that guy who filleted a goat was hysterical. They run the filter through us before they get to the story. And I think that's imperative as far as branding yourself and doing your own thing and making things yours, because all of us look at something and go like, I need to talk about this. This is something I want to talk about. Well, that's great. Everyone wants to talk about that. How do you talk about it? How do you mold it? How do you make that content yours? Because we've all got it. So what do you do to make it yours? And once you've got that, you've got it, man. You've got the game, and you're going to go and you're going to kick ass. And I think it's just that simple. I mean, it's not
it's not too far off from that. You know, it's really making stuff yours. I don't know. Maybe that sounds simple and stupid, but I truly believe it makes a big difference, you know, as far as the listener and the audience and the one-on-one connection and, you know, how we approach our show.
You know what's weird? So I first met BJ Shea and Miggs at the morning show boot camp, and I've been to like 4 or 5. And what I kind of feel sad about is, like, I know all radio shows use prep sheets, but I would like overhear like the Wacky Morning Show in Fargo at the bar, and then like the Wacky Morning Show in like any market, and they're all talking about how great the prep sheets are because they don't have to do any work. And that kind of makes me sad for the art of just radio. Like, it's one thing, like, as you're talking about how you use it, but don't you kind of look down when they're just using everything that's given to them and not doing anything that's original? It's one thing to look at the prep and be influenced by it, but when you're just using it and not doing anything, that really bothers me, because it's like you're not doing your show, you're doing the prep services show, and you're just saying it's your own material, especially when, like, it's one thing if you have a fake prank call. I respect the fake prank calls where they're actually talking to actors and they're actually putting in the work to present the fake prank call. But dude, like, when they
without question.
But when they have services that give them like the Carmen calls and that, and they're just playing it off of Adobe Audition MP3, that really bothers me. I just do not respect shows that just play things that are given to them. I don't know what it is. Maybe you don't agree with me, but do you know what I mean? Like, I just don't like that.
Brian, I totally agree with you. I think, like, if you're passionate about your craft, if you're passionate about radio, first of all, the first thing you don't want to do is steal things from other people. Because no matter if it's a joke on stage, like the Carlos Mencia thing or whatever it is, like, you should do your own thing. And if you're not doing your own thing, then maybe you can get by. Maybe you've been in Fargo for 15 years and this is your job and you don't really want to do it that much. But I think the people who are passionate, but I don't really think there's too many people out there like that. Maybe they're not creative enough to figure out their own thing, but they've been successful. But I completely agree. Like, you know, if it's a kid, man, who's, you know, 22 years old, who's trying to figure out his way and he's trying to figure out how to do radio, good for him. You know, he'll figure it out. It takes time in this business to, you know, you got to remember, man, like, we do 4 hours a day. That's 2 original screenplays a day of stuff that we prep. And it takes us 6 hours a day to come up with a 4-hour show between 4 of us. And all we want to do is be entertaining. And if you're not willing to put the work in on any job, doesn't matter what you do, and, you know, you're just trying to figure out the fastest way to do a shortcut or get away with this, or whether you're a plumber or you're radio or whatever it is, like, if you're not willing to take the time to try to be better at your craft, you know, you can take those shortcuts, but ultimately you're probably not going to be successful. So I think you can hear that based on what you said with that kind of crap, you know, like, I think if you love radio and you're passionate about it, man, you do it and you do the best job you can. And you know what? It's okay to fail. It's okay not to be funny. It's okay to miss on bits, but I'd rather go fishing all day and not catch a fish and have a good time and try my best than, you know what I mean, like, throw out a net and hope I snag something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was using some of the prep like maybe 2 weeks ago. My friend gave me his login to one of the prep services. I'm pretty sure you guys use it too. And like, I was using some of it and I was playing like the late night jokes from the previous night and critiquing it. But I was like, am I really doing this? I'm like, am I any better than like another show that's doing this? Like, because I just kind of looked at myself and my show that I do online, it just didn't sound as good. It just feels better to like go on YouTube and go on Reddit and find things that aren't given to you. You know what I mean? It feels like you're putting on your own original show.
Right. Well, like, just in the same way, we do a thing, and you've had Ted Smith on the show, the Ted Smith, before. We do a thing called Ted or Late Night. So Ted takes about 10 lines from the opening monologue of, you know, Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, Kimmel, whoever's Conan, you name it, and he tells the joke they told. And we have to guess who told that joke. Sometimes it's Ted's joke, so we have to guess whose joke it is. So instead of playing the actual audio from that, we just have him do live improv, try to recreate those jokes, try to do it, and then we try to guess who it is. So it's still someone else's content. But the way that we spin it is that it could be Ted's joke. And half the time when you hear Ted's joke, you're like, that's really funny. That's hysterical. Or, like anything else, like, I could tell that's you, Ted. You know what I mean? So it's like, again, we all get this crap. We all watch this stuff. How do you make it yours? We all get this crap, which it's not crap. It's just basically the rundown of things. How do you make it your own? And how do you contour it, to be part of your show? So the prep services are great, but the bottom line is the prep service is not giving me anything that I did not see yesterday. We did all that the day before because we comb for our own content. We try to get our own stuff, and we, try to curate that ourselves without the help of that. So
what I wanted to know, too, when you're a show that's syndicated, heard in different markets, what's the key to making sure that, like, the PD is happy with it? Do you guys feel pressure to, like, deal with, like, Kansas City and to deal with Seattle and Sacramento? Or is it pretty much the same thing? Because I've just wondered, like, do you have to respond to a lot of emails or FaceTimes? Like, do you communicate a lot with the people within there? Because you're not in that city. So what's it like dealing with all the different markets and what they want?
You know what? It's a great reflection of just the United States of America and where people are and, kind of how people do the thing. We used to get complaints for a while about saying "goddamn," and it came from one specific market in the heartland where people are just, like, that's not cool. They don't want to hear the Lord's name in vain. So we've made a conscious decision to try to eliminate that. We can say a lot of different things just based on the fact that, people in this area they don't want to hear that, and I get it. I'm not religious myself, so I don't have a barometer on that, but, I understand that would be offensive to people. And we do try to take that into consideration. We do try to, like the program director in Kansas City is not trying to change our show. He wouldn't put us on if he didn't like it and didn't want to do it. But he, if he calls them, goes, guys, please, you're killing it. Please don't say goddamn anymore. Like, you know what, man, you got a great point. We'll do our best to try to eliminate that from the dialogue or whatever it is. But typically it's not like that. It's just like, we love your show. You do a great show. And they wouldn't hire you if, they didn't think you already did a good show. So their job is not to come in and tell us how to do a show. Their job is to hopefully, our job, not theirs, our job is to hopefully make that shift successful and do well for them. So we do listen to the program directors from other stations, and we do listen to their suggestions and whatever, even if we take them or not. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but these are people who support us and people who want us to do well, and we want to do well, and we want the listener to enjoy the show. So we do take in, like anything else, we do take in any kind of feedback we can get, any kind of help we can get. Like, you never stop learning in this business. We don't know it all. There's some guys out there who are great program directors who've been doing it for years, who, trust me, know a lot. Of course, there are situations where some, don't know as much as others, just like any other job. But it's always good to listen. I think it's always good to listen to people, and whether you agree with it or not, it can always help you. As a person and as someone who's still trying to learn the craft. I mean, I'm doing this for 30 years, every single day. I still go in and try to learn something new. I still try to figure out something different. Like the game hasn't changed. It's the same. It's the same battle. It's the same. I don't know. This is, we just want to kick ass, and if we can do it, anyone who wants to help us kick ass, man. We'll take that. We'll take that. We'll take it one way or another, good or bad.
So I've been getting into 90s grunge rock, especially Soundgarden, Summit Temple of the Dog. How cool is it to think that you're in the market where it all began?
It's cool. It's cool. It's very cool. It's actually, yeah, it's cool in that aspect because I like that music. Like, that's my music. So for me, it's a big deal based on the fact that was the kind of music I grew up with. I'm 49 years old, and when I was 20 years old and the stuff was popping, it was, I'm in West Virginia going to college, and I listened to Soundgarden and Mother Love Bone and all these other bands. And then you get here, and then, you form friendships with these people and have them on the air all the time. And it's kind of a weird conundrum. Seattle is Seattle. So, Chris Cornell used to come on the show all the time, and he was one of our favorite guests and one of the greatest people in the world. And then you lose your friend, and that's kind of like Seattle. It's as much as the music scene is wonderful and it's great, and it's also dark and painful. As far as the personal aspect of that attitude to bring that kind of sound, to bring that kind of just angst, and that comes from the heart. So I think what we've learned more than anything is that all these people are just regular people. They're trying their best. They have the same litmus test that we do. They just want to be better at what they do, whether it's a new Alice in Chains record or, whatever it is. I think the saddest part about Seattle is just how many people have left us from here. It always just seems like it's one after another. And I think that's the most difficult thing to handle. But the music lives on. People love the music. I still love the music. It took me like 2 years to listen to Soundgarden or Cornell after he died, because I have a hard time listening to it, because I know the guy. And it's, it sucks. It's like, it's like your friend passing away, man. It just, so as much as you want to make it entertainment, want to make it music, it becomes entirely way too personal sometimes. And that still sucks, if that makes any sense.
Now, for people that haven't checked out your show, why should they check it out?
Why should they check out the show? I think if they want to be entertained and get a little escapism and just kind of, no matter what's going on in their lives, have a chance to laugh, have a chance to, have a smile on their face and have a good time. And, we don't talk dark. We don't talk deep. We live in a clouded city with rain and, not the best weather. And we really try to keep it upbeat and keep it happy, and still get our opinions out there. But I think ultimately we would, if you would like a little bit of escape and you would like to laugh, I think we bring a very different aspect to the radio. You got to remember, we're not doing political talk. We're not doing religious stuff. We're not on a sports station. We're not breaking down, like, oh my God, why the Buccaneers defense sucked this week or did great this week, or, it's none of that. It's just basically one-on-one communication with people and to get to know people. And it's different, man. And I tell you what, Ryan, because of that, we have a very difficult time with most of radio, because most of radio does not understand what we do yet. They are still in this. You're at the bone. We're playing metal. We're doing this. And like we would do stuff where we would play like a Rick Astley song in the middle of something just to mess with somebody, or we'd break off music and all those things that we find entertaining. But a regular program director would be like, dude, we're hard rock. You can't do that. And radio is very boxed in. The radio is, we have this thing to do. This is our show. This is our station. We're doing this. We're doing that. We're doing the other. And every time anyone crosses over, they go, "Oh my God, Bruno Mars made a rock record," or whatever it is. Like music is music. We don't live on that philosophy. So, we ultimately challenge radio a lot, and that sometimes it works, sometimes it backfires, but we truly believe that no one's going home and just listening to Maiden. Like in the back of their closet somewhere, they've got a Backstreet Boy record, or they've got something else. It's just not metal. It's just not this. Like, you're just not going to horror movies. You're just not going to romantic. Like, everybody digests everything. I just don't eat Chinese food every night. And that's the way radio thinks. Like, we have a Chinese restaurant. This is what you're serving. This is all we got. Like, we don't do that. We really try to cast a wide net and just try to get as many people to listen as possible. And radio is not accustomed to that, and they're not in tune with it. And it's kind of hard to do a talk show. Like, they'll say, like, well, could you be on this conservative talk show? It's like, well, yeah, we could definitely do conservative AM radio if we had to, but we're not talking politics. Like, we could just do really good talk. Or if it was Air America when they were still around, like, well, you guys going to talk politics? Well, no, but we can do talk, and we can relate to people, and it doesn't matter what affiliation they are with, whatever the politics are and that stuff. And I think that's the hardest nut for us to crack in radio, because it's very, very segmented. And most of the people who are in radio, they don't understand that. Like, they don't want a talk show on a music station, because all they know is basically, hey, I'm going to go in every day and promote someone else's art, which is music. It's like making a mixtape for a girl when you're in 8th grade. I know how to make this, hour work well, from a quarter-hour standpoint, music and all this stuff. And I know I'm getting a little deep for a non-radio listener, but they psychoanalyze that stuff down to the point where it's just all about someone else's content and not their own. And we are all about our own content. We're not trying to be something that we're not. And man, I hope it works. You never know, Ryan. I might be calling you for a job in a couple of years. Like, dude, we got fired. But it's still worth the battle, right?
Dude, I'm kind of at the same point where I'm not like, I've been at the Bone for 4.5 years, and like my show's not on the Bone, but I work at the Bone and I fill up my part-time hours helping out the Bone and then board hopping on the weekend. But because I'm given access to record the room here, it sounds like I'm on the radio, and I get like 2,500 listens a week. So it's one of those things where it's like I'm not.
That's fantastic, man. That's awesome.
Thanks, bro. So like I'm
man.
not gonna like change my show to get it on the radio. Like if my show's a little edgy or a little hyper, I've kind of come to this like place of maybe last year that I've been doing the show by myself, that I'm doing what I want to do, and it seems to be working because it's kind of like not what you're going to hear on the radio. Like it's kind of like my mind. It's like a circus, and I take pride in that and not sounding like the everyday show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and as far as changing and all that stuff, you should want to do that all the time. You should want to adapt on your own, but under your own principles, under your own whatever you want to do, man. If you have a good idea, go for it. And constantly evolve and constantly change, and don't get stuck in too many ruts, like where you feel like you're talking about one thing too much or whatever. Like once you figure out what you want to do, it's all good. Like, I know you work your ass off, man. I know how hard you've worked to get to where you are, and I know you've moved from your family and all that stuff, and that's those are the sacrifices if you want to be in this business. And most people don't know that or hear that, or they don't know. They don't know you don't live close to your mom and all that crap. They just know that you're entertaining them, and you bring that perspective to them, every week. So
it is kind of weird because like I've been out of Chicago for 5 years now, and my little cousin that was in 4th grade or 5th grade then is now in 9th or 10th grade. And like, it's kind of depressing that I didn't see him grow up. But I mean, Chicago's such a weird market because they keep bringing back the same 4 names, and they're wondering why what worked in 1980 or 1990 or 2003, why it's not working now. And I'm kind of waiting for when Chicago will embrace my generation, but it's just not happening right now. So that's why I'm in Tampa, is I'm just trying to like build that. I like to say I'm like the Adult Swim of Tampa radio. Like I'm not the biggest show, but like I have somewhat of a fan base. Yeah, so I'm trying to keep that going, like trying to be like the Aqua Teen Hunger Force of radio.
Sure. And trust me, your audience now is global. It's not one market. And you're right. There's a lot of those markets out there where people don't move. Most of your friends from Chicago are probably still in Chicago. They probably don't have a plan to leave Chicago.
Nope.
Where I grew up in West Virginia, all those people are there. If you listen to Pittsburgh radio, it's the same people who have been on the air for 40 years. If you listen to Baltimore radio, if you listen to DC radio, but the one thing about Seattle is it's a very transitional community, and a lot of people come in and out of here, and I'll tell you why. It's very simple. It's one word: jobs. In all those other markets, like not Chicago, but, like people don't come in and out. So there is that lethargy of, everyone knows Charles Lacrobarda or whatever his name is, and, or Mancow or wherever, whoever the Chicago guys are. I think they have Tim Virgin on, who's been on the air for 40 years, does a great job. But, it's just the market, and the market dictates that. And all these towns are different, and all these places are different. And, trust me, I'm right there with you. I bang my head against the wall like, please, God, somebody give us a break. And it's just a matter of comfort, and it's a matter of people who, the radio to them is one of those things where it's and that's why we do the same things at the same time, because familiarity breeds comfort, and people like that are just, they're not leaving, they're not moving out of Baltimore, they're not doing that, and that's why they have and good for those people who still get to keep those jobs over the year. But yeah, you're right, there's definitely time for a little bit of a resurgence, Matt, and bringing in some young blood and doing a different style of that. And I hope you're right. I hope that happens.
So last year at the morning show boot camp, I got to drink with Menace, Woody, and Tim Virgin at the same bar at the same time, and that was the most fascinating night, just hearing three radio guys just talk about radio. That was a very interesting night. It was very cool.
Yeah, no, man, and it's always cool to hang around radio people because there's not a lot of them out there, and like there's not a lot of experiences you can share with a lot of people as far as your job goes who are outside of that, because like anything else, you only know what you do, but there's only a few of those people in town, so to have the opportunity to sit down and talk to somebody and kind of relate is that's always a good thing, and plus you get to drink and you're out of town.
Hell yeah, you do.
Hotel room and smoke weed and be that guy.
Hell yeah, of course, man. But I would never do that, quote unquote. Where can people find your show?
You know what? We're at mensroomlive.com. Our company would be very fired up if I said you could find us on the radio.com app. Yeah, man, just I would hope that we're on Apple and all the same platforms that everyone else has. But I would just hope they would check it out, and see what they think. It's definitely a different kind of radio show. I think it's the most unique radio show in radio, based on the fact that it's just different from everything else. Doesn't mean it's the best. Just means it's different than everything else that's out there. So I'm hoping, man, keep your fingers crossed, and hopefully I can get this kid through college without getting fired, right?
That's the plan. How weird is that, having kids in radio, just overall?
It's awesome, because I've got a kid at San Diego State University, and the first thing she did was go down there, unbeknownst to me, and sign up for the college radio station. And so she does a hip-hop show on Saturday night. She loves hip-hop. She loves Kendrick Lamar and, Fitty Wap and all that stuff, and she just wants to do her thing. I think it's awesome. I never really thought that I'd had that kind of influence on her, and she went down there and said, I don't want to do a sorority. I want to do radio and get my word out. I'm like, oh my God, really? So I'm actually going down there to see her tomorrow. I'm going to fly down for a parent weekend and hang out and make sure that she hasn't lost her mind yet, because she's 18 years old and she can drink and smoke weed with her friends on her own without my supervision. So I'm hoping that she's hanging in there all right.
Why don't you think she's going to wait until she's 21 to drink?
Well, the same reason that we all didn't.
Good answer.
Yeah.
My mom thinks
I'd like to think I was a better parent than that, but you know what I'm talking about, Ryan.
Dude, there's no way to prevent it. I mean, I don't even know how parents deal with it. Like, I just wasn't invited to parties, so luckily there wasn't too much underage drinking. But there were a few times when I was a teen running from the cops. I mean, I got away. The thing was, when you were drunk at the party, I had a really good spidey sense of, because this was like 2012, so this was like when like EDM music was like popping. This is when I listen to EDM now, but just the old EDM to feel like I'm young.
Sure.
But just imagine there was a house party I went to, like a middle class house, kind of looked like the house on Roseanne, and there's like 45 kids, maybe smoking weed, but all drinking, and they're blaring EDM. And I could kind of tell that the cops were going to come, and I walked home in 10-degree weather, drunk as hell, and the cops came. I was always good at knowing when to leave. I always knew when to leave.
And I hope, like I've always tried to do well by my parents, and make sure that they, think that I'm doing okay. And there's some weird checks in there. Like my mom will call me up and go, "Hey, my friends are having a family reunion here in West Virginia. Do you know a DJ that could come and play a party on?" I'm like, "Mom, I don't do that. That's not what I do." But they have their own. But hey, Ryan, I know your dad's looking down on you and proud of you, and I know you busted your ass, and I know you're doing a great job. I got to jump, man, because I've got a ride waiting for me. But I really appreciate the talk, man.
Awesome,
and the conversation.
Bro. Thank you, dude.
Yeah, man. Yeah, talk to me anytime, man.
All right, see you, man.
Cool, bro.
All right, bye.
Hoppe. This is Hoppe Hour.